and I'm sure you can see my screen. And Caro, I've had complaints that some students are not getting to be given a chance to speak. So I don't know how we're going to randomize are going to come. At least I know about 10 marks will be attributed to participation in the class. So normally I try to be random, but it seems I never quite get there. So we must devise a way where we have a list where students are able to be picked randomly instead of talking about the same students all the time. So I want to try and look at for students who have not been vocal. I don't want to say vocal, who have not been able to take up challenges of speaking in class. Somebody like Silvanos Yetare. If he's around, I would like him to start us with the reading of the devotion. And I'll tell you where to stop. And as the instructor has said, please let us try to be live so that we know each other by turning on our videos. Okay, Carol, is he there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, can you start us off, please?
Okay, thank you. So I should turn on my camera.
Yeah, turn on your camera. Is it camera or want to have a video? But anyway, whichever it is. All right.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So vision requires action to become a reality. Proverbs chapter 29, verse 18, Ephesians chapter 1, verse 18, and Matthew chapter 6, verse 22. A summary.
Yeah. And just pause there. Pause there. Can somebody pick up Proverbs 29:18 as our Bible reading today, Ephesians 1:18 and Matthew 6:22. We will meet them in my devotion. So just bear that in mind. Carry on.
A summary. A reporter once said to Helen Keller, what will be worse than being born blind? She
Once
replied,
what? Ngoja kwanza. Hello? Maybe my internet is unstable, but a reporter once said.
A reporter once asked to Helen Keller, what will be worse than being born blind? She replied, the only thing worse than being blind is to have sight without vision.
Yeah. And I would like you to contemplate on this one. That's a very strong answer. What would be worse than being born blind? And the answer was the only thing worse than being blind is to have sight without vision. Yeah, that's very profound. Carry on, Sylvanus.
King Solomon.
Just a minute. Gaki has raised the hand. Gaki.
Thank you, Prof. I just remembered once when I was in campus, a preacher once shared. It was a Sunday where we normally would have someone with probably a special need coordinating the service. And our preacher that day happened to someone who had impaired vision. So in one part, he actually told us this. Many a times, when he actually gave us a setup, like it's in a school setup, it's in boarding, and then one day the light went off. So for this particular student who had who was blind, in short, if I can use, is that for her, she continued learning and everyone else could not learn because there were no lights. So, and they actually gave us a situation in this particular point, then who was blind at that particular instance. Yes, you can see, but you have no lights, you can't continue to study. But this blind student, because have been used to that, was able to keep on reading because of the use of the braille reading. So when that was mentioned or read, it threw me back to that particular time point.
All right. Thank you very much, Gaki. Carry on, Sylvanus.
King Solomon, in his wisdom and under the inspiration, wrote, "Where there is no vision, the people perish. But he that keeps the law, happy is he." Proverbs chapter 29, verse 18. In the Bible, vision refers to the will and purpose of God being made known. In other words, inspired and divine guidance. God has not left us without inspired guidance. He has given us his divinely inspired word. Where it is not known and or applied, it has natural consequence. Where there is no vision, the people perish. It is summed up in the word perish. The meaning of the Hebrew word for perish means let loose, run wild, or casting off restraint. If people don't know what to do, they don't do anything, or they do their own thing and become ungovernable, deprived, or moral restraints and cannot be reined in. Many people have
I think just hold on, Sylvanus. Please hold on. I would like the class to get into deep reflection here. We read Proverbs 29:18, where there's no vision, the people perish. But he that keeps the law, happy is he. But I think the bigger point here is that where it is not known and or applied, this thing called wisdom or vision, it has a natural consequence. And I've tried to elucidate where there's no vision, the people perish. It is summed up in the word perish. And the meaning of the Hebrew word for perish means let loose, run wild, or casting off restraint. So if you are managing an institution, you cast off restraints and you embezzle people's funds and you don't provide the needed service and you enrich yourself and you move from wherever to buy property in Karen or Mudaiga at the expense of public funds. You run wild. You let loose. And if people don't know what to do, they don't do anything, or they do their own thing and become ungovernable. Sometimes I look at our national parliament and supposed to be a governing body, but it is ungovernable. They have no sense of restraint in what they do. They vet cabinet secretaries or permanent secretaries, and it doesn't matter whether you are a thief or you are illiterate, you will still be vetted. So you are deprived of moral restraints. So you know morally that person cannot be a cabinet secretary for public service, and you still vote that person. And they cannot be reined in. By the way, it's a very, very serious matter.
Well, the people they are giving packet of unga to put there. That's the problem.
Yeah. So where there's no vision, where there is no wisdom, there's no restraint. And it is very fundamental that you must have it within yourself. And that is my message today in today's devotion. Sylvanus, you're the one still reading, so carry on.
Many people have chosen to ignore divine guidance and live a lifestyle based on greed, lust, selfishness, egotism, and improper pride. As a consequence, they have been living by sight alone, and that's one reason they have all kinds of physical problems, muscle tension, migraines, high blood pressure, heart disease, ulcers, tumors, and so on. Your vision comes from God. It is not something you thought overnight. Vision gives purpose and adds meaning to our life. Philippians chapter 1, verse 21.
Yeah. Carry on.
Sight is a function of the eyes. Sight is a function of the eyes, while vision is a function of the heart. True vision consists of foresight, insight, and oversight that comes from God's sight. Foresight is like looking at life through a telescope. This outlook allows us to know what is ahead, and it connects us to our future. Insight is the element of vision that helps life make sense and give us the motivation that we described earlier. Insight is like viewing life through a microscope. This perception gives us an understanding of why things happen in life. It also helps determine the underlying motivations of the heart. Oversight puts life into context. God's sight assures us that the vision we have is from God.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that we are digesting the content of this message. Sight is a function of the eyes, while vision is a function of the heart. Insight is the element of vision that helps life make sense and gives us the motivation that we are talking about. So you see, insight is deeply reflective. Today, if you just took some insights into some of our counties, you will see where there's vision and where there's no vision. Yeah, you just see it. And you might call it a perception, but perception gives us an understanding of why things happen in life. And perception helps us determine the motivations of the heart. So even this program we are doing, a master's in leadership and policy studies, I have very clear perceptions. And they give me motivation on where I want this course to go. But why? Why is a VC interested in this master's program? You see, I have a vision, and I know that if we can do it right in this master's program, that those perceptions will permeate the rest of the university, and Daystar will never be the same again. But we also must learn that God's sight assures us that the vision we have is from God. So that's why some people have it, others don't have it. And that's why I normally tell people not to be too critical about who is God. So sometimes when I look at the Abrahamic religions of Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, I'm then convinced that we are perhaps looking at the same God. Because when I read the Quran, and I've read the Quran over and over, the English version, it's saying the same thing. It is just the root differs. What am I trying to say? That it seems whether you are a Muslim or whether you are a Christian or whether you are a Jew, you believe in a God. You believe in one text, and you believe in life after death. So I'm very convinced that this wisdom must be coming from God. Gaki, take over the reading. And let us try to show our images where we can, where the internet is stable. Gaki. Are you there? I thought she was in class. Are you there?
Off. Gaki fell off.
Sorry, Dr. Prof, my internet.
Yes,
I'm back. It's my internet. I'm back.
Okay, you're back. Can you take up the reading?
Sure, thank you. A vision from the Lord creates a mission from heaven. It is vision that makes the unseen visible and the unknown. Sorry, a blockage on my. Sorry, allow me to start again. A vision from the Lord creates a mission from heaven. It is vision that makes the unseen visible and the unknown possible. Vision starts from within. Vision is more than just a mental image of the future. Vision sees a better, more desirable future and provides direction and fuels motivation for its achievement. Vision is what we see.
This post, I like that vision starts from within. I'll give you an example. I have walked into, God has allowed me to walk into institutions. I walked into a school called Kegoye Secondary School, a Harambe school, with 25 students, with one class, with the mud walls and smearing cow dung on the ground. God gave me a vision. And the vision is that you can make a difference. And so I started approaching embassies in Nairobi. And by the time I was leaving that school, we had 460 students. We had a laboratory from the Germans, an agriculture workshop from the British, a dormitory from the the Netherlands, a zero grazing unit from NORAD. You see, a vision starts from within, and we planted trees. Then I went to Lubino Boys, and God gave me a vision. The boys in Mumias had a learning culture in primary school. So I knew we could get results. And we had to turn them from being rioters, boys who are jumping on tractors of sugarcane, to sit down in class. So my deputy, the late Amayo, and myself took refuge in the classroom. And within 2 years, the third year, Lubino was number 52 in the country. Where are these things coming from? Yeah, where are they coming from? A vision from the Lord creates a mission for you. So then, because of that, Lubino, the late president, asked me to start Sunshine on Langata Road. Langata Road, there was no single tree on that compound. Parents used to come with umbrellas. Look at how Sunshine looks today. And God gave us a vision, driven by things. If you read my book on leadership, I hope all of you will be able to read it. We just said, since we have the advantage of being a presidential school, we are going to be in the top 10 on first attempt. Comes from within, but it was more than just a mental image of the future. That desired future, we had to work hard to get to it. And we can go on and on. Those of you who are alumni of Moi, I don't know whether you know the front of Moi University, the Senate building. There used to be a big hall there, very big hall, crevice, that had been built for a graduation ceremony and then left. What you see there, the flowers and the slabbing and the what, just a vision. And we said, let us beautify. If we can't do anything, we can make the place look a little better. And let us do a wall so that we don't see the slums of Talai. I'm saying something. Come to Daystar at the River Campus. You are driving in and you see chain link with the rotten posts falling down and no vegetation other than the natural vegetation. What can we do? Ladies and gentlemen, there is so much power in a vision that even today, I was marking your assignments. I don't know whether Caro has posted them. I am urging you to have a very strong vision and exercise wisdom. Then you'll come out strong. But where the averages I'm seeing in that class, I'm convinced we haven't built a strong vision and therefore mission around this program. So it is very, very important that we digest this devotion and relate it to our own situation. I want you to go back to your studies, to your family, to your, some of you have worked for 10 years, for 15 years, but there's nothing to show for it. And there are some of you here, you have worked for less than 10 years, and there's so much to show for it in your lives. Gaki, carry on.
Vision is what we see, but it's also the way in which we see. Vision is the lens that interprets the events of our life. the way we view people and our concept of God. If we have a scratch on our glasses, it may seem like everybody around us has scratches too, but the problem actually lies with us because our vision is impaired. Jesus said
Carry
that
on.
Jesus said that our eyes are the windows of our heart. That is in Matthew chapter 6, verse 22. Paul prayed that the eyes of our heart would be enlightened. In Ephesians chapter 1, verse 18, in other words, we perceive with our eyes, but we see with our hearts. Our minds receive images from, sorry, our minds receive images from our eyes, but our heart interprets these images. If our heart becomes bitter, jealous, hurt, or in some way infected, the lens of our heart is distorted. What we perceive is happening and what
We have lost you. Or is it me? Can you hear me? Can somebody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Gaki, we have lost.
We
Gaki.
can hear
Gaki,
you.
we have lost. Gaki, are you back? Vivian Kimadi, can you pick up from Jesus said that our eyes are the windows of our heart? Kimadi Vivian. And I've told you people in my class, don't come online and then go and start cooking, because I'll call you anytime. Yeah.
Can I go?
Yeah. Who is that?
This is Taslin.
Okay, go on.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Jesus said that our eyes are in the windows. Okay, start my video. I can't start my video, please, later. Jesus said that our eyes are the windows of our heart. In Matthew 3, chapter 6, verses 22, Paul prayed that the eyes of our heart would be enlightened. In Ephesians 1, verse 1, chapter 1, in 1:18, in other words, we perceive our eyes, but we see with our hearts. Our minds receive images from our eyes, but our heart interprets these images. If our hearts become bitter, jealous, hurt, or in some way infected, the lens of our hearts is distorted. What we perceive is happening, and what is really going on could be two completely different things. This is why the Bible says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. That is in Proverbs 4:23. Thank you.
Yeah, very profound. Guard your heart. And notice what it says. Our minds receive images from our eyes, but our heart interprets these images. So we could be sitting with you, we could be walking with you around Valley Road campus, and we keep seeing tankers of water coming to serve the toilets in that 7th floor building. And you can do that, you can sit there for 10 years. But you don't have the vision to know that we can actually drill a borehole and have our own reliable source of water. Yeah. What's the difference? That's the difference that I'm talking about. Othello, raise your hand.
I want to, there's something you touched on, it has touched me also. And I was always saying, but why are we bringing tankers here now? This tanker is expensive to be bringing tankers to bring water here. Why can we do a borehole? And then Prof came and did a borehole.
Yes, yes. It does that. I think let's move on because of time. Paul Amata, are you able to read? Paul?
Yes, Prof. Yes, Prof.
Okay, go ahead. Are you able? I can't hear you. Oh my. Sarah Angachi, can we try you?
Yes, Prof. People with vision possesses two things. They know where they are going, and they are able to persuade others to follow. Vision applies to all individuals, community, nation, government, organizations. People who don't have plans for their future are planning to fail. When you visualize, then you materialize. Your vision will help you have a sense of direction and fulfillment as you work your way to your dreams. Life is so full of depressing things that you need to learn to live by vision and see with the eyes of faith. God gave us vision so we'll not have to live by what we see. Bible affirms that, for we live by faith, not by sight. 2 Corinthians 5, verse 7. If you try to function in any other way than faith, you will malfunction. That is why worry is ungodly and fear makes your vision short circuit. Without faith, the spiritual privileges and provisions cannot be activated.
Please pause there. Yeah, without faith. And by the way, for we live by faith, not by sight. And that's why by faith, you have enrolled for this program. And by faith, you are determined to go through it. And I like the sentence that is why worry is ungodly and fear makes your vision short circuit. Carry on.
You cannot appropriate what you don't believe. You cannot inspect what you do not expect. Hebrews 10:38 says, the just shall live by faith. Look behind you. What have you learned? Look ahead of you. What is the big picture? Look above yourself. What is God expecting of you? Look besides you. What resources are available to you? Have a faith in God means looking beyond what we can see to what God sees. God gave us gift of faith, so we will not have to live by what we see. Life is like riding a bicycle. To keep our balance, we must keep moving by faith. God's mighty power comes when God's people learn to walk by faith. Remember, without faith, it is impossible to please God. Hebrews 11, verse 6.
Obadiah Bahizire, are you able to read for us the last paragraph?
Wow, my eyes.
Obadiah? Wow.
Can I go?
Teresa? Who is that?
This Paul, Samantha.
Okay, Paul Amata, you come. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, yes. Sorry, my network fluctuated. Now let me read this one. To walk by faith, we must be constantly fast. We must be constantly pursue and practice the blessing. Constantly pursue and practice the blessings of God. There must be a constant cry of our hearts to experience His presence. The source of our faith is the Word of God. So then, faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the Word of God. Romans 10, verse 17. To walk by faith is to fear God more than man. To choose righteousness over sin. To choose righteousness over sin, no matter what the cost. To trust God in every circumstance and to believe God rewards those who seek Him. The source of our faith becomes the quality of our faith. This is why Jesus Christ, when He came to earth, encouraged people to have faith in God. Mark chapter 11, verse 22. Jesus was filled with faith, and He was the calmest person ever lived on earth, on the face of adversity. He slept soundly in the middle of the storm. When His frightened disciples woke Him up, He asked them, "Do you still have faith? Do you still have no faith?" Mark 4, verse 14. He was telling them, if you have faith, you will be able to sleep during a storm as well. Remember, it is faith that makes the unseen visible and the unknown possible. Spiritual is purchased by knowledge. Thank you.
Yes. So that is my devotion to you this evening. And I'm just saying, vision requires action to become a reality. And you will not begin to action your vision if you don't have faith. Yeah. If fear and worry short circuits everything that you want to do. So I'll invite one or two members of the class to give a reflection to align with the devotion of today, and then we'll move on because we have quite a bit to go through. Brenda King, please.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. I think from today's devotion, I've learned that vision propels one to put extra effort in whatever thing that they're doing. And I've also learned from your stories from time and time that indeed one who lives by the grace of God, God never fails to reward them abundantly. Grace will always follow you wherever you go. So thank you so much for this. That's my short summary comment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other person? There are two participants who have raised up their hands. Can we hear from Manyara and GB Sanya? Yeah.
Thank you, Prof, and good evening to all.
Good evening, yeah.
Today's reading is quite touching. To me, the idea of having a vision as a teacher is very important. And I just want to emulate what you have said in your journey as a principal. When I was first appointed as a principal, I was posted in a rural school where the school in almost 8 years had never produced any graduate. For that, I mean a university graduate. And when I went there, I had to have a discussion, and a candid one, with my teachers and the students and the parents. I found the school at a mean of 2.8, but within 5 years, we were the best school, sub-county school. I was in Naivasha with a mean of 6. And it was because of that vision that we were able to get that. My idea was in every homestead around that area, which was called Maela, we should have a graduate. And within that span of 5 years, we've been able to help more than 100 students to join the university. So vision is very, very important, and trust in God. We were trying to put a lot of faith in whatever work we were doing. Thank you.
Wonderful. Jimmy, Sanya, and then Regina, and then Othello, I've seen your hand. Let's go in that order.
Thank you, Prof. Good evening to you.
Good evening, yeah.
Yes, I've been asking myself loudly on whether, because the Bible says, from what we've read from Proverbs chapter 29, verses 18, it says that where there is no vision, no redemptive revelation of God, the people perish. I also want to think that we can either have no vision, we can have vision in 2 ways. That is, right.
Yeah, you are getting lost, Sanya.
We can also have a wicked vision. Being a teacher nowadays, as an employee of the Teacher Service Commission, there are many instances whereby we teachers will want to climb up the promotion ladder so that we have our grades being uplifted. We are given responsibilities of being to be in charge, to be a principal in charge of our school. I want to believe that most of us will go for a school that is already established. A good administration block, good student numbers. Can we vision, or they could be having a wicked or an unethical vision, as they aspire even to be administrators in asking myself.
Yeah, we are losing you, but I think the point is made.
Loudly, and I can post it to all of us.
Okay. Regina? Regina, can you come in? I'm feeling
yes. Good evening, Prof. And the entire class.
Yeah.
Yeah, from this video, I have learned that for us to succeed in what we want to achieve, we must drive away fear and worry, because they spoil everything. So, of course, nothing is served on a silver plate. And on our way to success, we will always encounter challenges and drawbacks. But in such circumstances, we must soldier on and increase our faith and then drive away fear. So thank you. That's my contribution.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we just give Juliet a chance, Otieno, and then allow me to run quickly to the class because there's so much I want to cover also. Yeah. Although I never regret in spending time on our devotions, because apart from who we are also building character and values so that degree really has meaning at the end of the day. Yeah. Juliet.
Thank you so much, Prof. Personally, I really love your devotions. So to me, they are very important. I'm always looking forward to hear what is God speaking to me today through Prof. And I've always picked something to keep me going. So I really love the example that you gave of that school that you joined and it was down there, and how you try to look for ways and the school rising, and from there now God lifting you from one place to another. And I would like to agree with my brother Jimmy. I was really following his contribution, though his network was denying me some words, but he was giving a very nice one there, that many a times you are looking for schools, being a teacher, we are looking for schools that do so well because we are looking for somewhere that has already been established. But why can't I go somewhere and be that part of the establishment and just look back and say that indeed this is God's hand and help that brought us here? And I feel so much rebuked, let me say that, because I've been pursuing a transfer where I am to another school, and I've always been focusing, even when I'm applying for the schools to get to, I'm trying to look for the schools that has higher means and such like things that are well established. But now these other schools that don't have well established places, who are going to go there if everybody is running to the established places? So it's like I'm challenged that now wherever you go, number one, have a vision, because that's what I've learned tonight. Because with a vision together with faith, then you can achieve anything. And then just focus. With your focus and your trust in God, prayer, and do your part, then the rest leave to God. Then you will rise to see those greater things. So thank you so much for reminding us about vision. And it is not just vision, but vision together with faith is the greatest combination. Thank you.
Okay, Prof, can I just make a short contribution? We'll move on. Hello, Prof, can I just make a short contribution?
Yes, Othello, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. The message was very inspiring. There's something you said at the beginning, which makes me to think about what Jesus did with the legion when he cast out the demons, called the legion, and then he went into the demons said, "No, please send us." They sent us to the pigs, and they went to the pigs. The pigs ran wild down the hill, and they all perished. So when you're talking about lack of vision, when people lack vision, the people perish. So then I was looking at it in this way. Allow me to be a little bit political. We have a situation where people going into politics, getting into position of public office, are actually doing it with the motivation of trying to grab public coffers, not being patriotic and actually feeling for the country and their people and thinking about the future of their country, but they are actually greedy to grab for themselves, for their own pockets. So, Prof, what you have been doing from that time you're talking about Lubino, is it Lubino? Yes. From all the way there to Sunshine and then to Daystar, you have been investing in people. And it's across, and even in this class, you are investing in people and giving people food for thought all the time when you go through these devotions. And so for us, some of us, we are small, nobody knows us, but because we love Africa, we love our people, we do something for people to benefit, especially, let me just bring a small example of working in the media. And I've gone through a lot of things here. When I worked in the media, I was actually doing investigative reporting. I got a lot of stories which I did, and a lot of things changed here in Kenya. And there was a time I got wind that the national park, the Nairobi National Park, was going to be subdivided, and people were eyeing powerful people were eyeing the Nairobi National Park. And then I got that story. When I published the story in a paper, actually people were shocked. And then the European Union came in and partnered with the government to form what they call Friends of Nairobi National Park to stop the park being grabbed. I also did an investigation when people grabbed some group of people First, they said that they had office at Reinsurance Plaza, but I went there, I did my investigation, I went to the Ministry of Lands, I found no file belonging to those people. I went to Reinsurance Plaza where they said they had office, I could not find them. I looked for them all over. I went to Kitengela, I met with the Maasai people. The land was grabbed, and the corridor for migration of the animals from Serengeti National Park in Tanzania to Kenya and back to Tanzania was grabbed. I went there, I was taken there by the Maasai people. A standard gave me a car to go there and spend the whole day. I left in the morning, and then I finished the work at around midnight. I went to Park Place Hotel, Ongata Rongai, and the guy who actually was leading me was a Muzungu, also who is somebody who is interested in what happens in the environment, an environmental conservationist. So through them, I did the work. When I published the story, that park was saved. The Nairobi National Park was saved from being grabbed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll be getting this sermon uploaded onto your portal. I hope you had our last sermon, Learning How to Be Brought Law, uploaded. I hope you have it. And the whole idea is to spread this word of God. So when you have an opportunity in your community, in your church, with your spouse at home, in your schools, go to parade and be different. Go and tell them about translating vision into action and what it does. Josephine, I can see you are persistent. You have something to say? Because I've already put up something for sharing. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Last week you told us to remind you about limitations, delimitations. You've mentioned about them, but I didn't hear you talk about assumptions. Understanding assumptions. Also told us to remind.
Yeah, thank you. Those are the two I want to do before I summarize literature review. Thank you very much. Yeah, so we're going to look at understanding limitations and delimitations, and then assumptions. Ladies and gentlemen, in your chapter 1, when you are crafting your chapter 1, next semester we are starting, the course that was called seminar will be called Disciplined Inquiry, where we begin to help you develop your proposal. And in chapter 1, all the aspects we have covered up to now will be valuable, but up to PhD level, even in the last defenses, we had problems with people not understanding what is the limitation of a study, what is the delimitation, and what is the scope. And I want clarity at master's level now, so that by the time you're going to PhD, you're not even thinking about that. There is also assumptions. So my objective here is to enable you to write about the limitations or delimitations of your study. And I'm just going to pull this from my book. We are still struggling with KLB. I think they're too busy with the CBC books, but I hope we can get it launched very soon. And just allow me to go through this with you, and then I will circulate it again in your portals for further reading. But in my many years working with doctoral students and master students like you, I've found there is still a prevailing confusion between the terms limitations and the term delimitation. And we must clean this out. We must clean this out. I've seen this to be the case with both experienced and novice researchers. By the way, I've sat in defenses and I've had your supervisors literally mislead the panels because they also don't understand the difference between a limitation and a delimitation. And so there is a dearth. A dearth means there is a positive, there is a minus in the research methods class that is required for master's and doctoral students. And after all my years of working with and editing the work of doctoral and master's students, there still seems to be a prevailing problem. There is a problem. And I want you to get it from me that you must understand what a limitation and what a delimitation of a study is, because that is in your chapter 1. You'll have to tell us, based on your study, what were your limitations, what was the delimitation. The problem is that most of them do not know the difference between the two terms, limitations and delimitations. They either have never learned the differences between the two terms or have learned alternative definitions that further confuse them. However, I think I found a useful definition and examples to help students and researchers understand the differences between the two terms. I also struggled with them. But you know, me have an advantage is because of the 3 masters, the PhD, and the postdoc. Those 5, by the time I was finishing them, and in each I had to do research methods, you can see it became common knowledge. So it is not that I'm brilliant, it's just that I've had to do this over and over and over and over again. So I want to try and bring this out clearly and give you some examples of what a limitation and what a delimitation is. Now, definition of limitations. Limitations are defined as constraints on your study based on the research methodology and design. Very important. I wish I could say it better. So limitations have something to do with methodology and design. Primarily, limitations deal with the constraints on the research method that you're using. And this is Miles and Scott 2017. So limitations are constraints you cannot control in your study. You can't control. Simon and Gause 2013. That is why limitations are often defined as being out of the control of the researcher. However, many students do not know the reason for this definition. A recurring problem with doctoral and master students is that they are completely misinformed regarding the true meaning of a limitation. And this is confusing to them because of the generic definitions of a limitation. What do you know from your language, from your English? So the characteristics of a study in which the researcher cannot control the limitations. I want you to note this. The characteristic of a study in which the researcher cannot control the limitations. And people become even more confused. So the generic definition leaves both the committee and the doctoral student totally confused. So there's a reason why a researcher has no control over the characteristics of a study. it is because you cannot control inherent flaws in your research methodology and design. You can't control them. This is the reason why this is out of your control. With limitations, your research method and design remain constant. There's nothing you can do about it. For example, 30 years from now, a researcher who wishes to replicate your study can do so by using the same research method. A future researcher using the same research method will face the same limitations you faced. And I'm going to illustrate that. These have to do with the means you have chosen for gathering and analyzing data. So I'm emphasizing that limitations are those restrictions created by your research methodology, the research methodology that you choose. So if you choose the method of quantitative, there will be certain limitations because you have gone quantitative. That becomes a limitation. If you choose a qualitative approach, there are certain limitations that are attributed to a qualitative approach. So I want to emphasize limitations are the built-in limits of the method you use to explore your question. So if you are thoughtful and analytical about your chosen method, you should have no trouble identifying the design factors that might produce inaccurate or misleading data and possibly lead to mistaken conclusions. So, if you're going to do a quantitative study and you are using a small sample, that is a major limitation. Yeah, because in quantitative studies, we want a large sample to minimize the error. So if you're going to do a quantitative study and you're using a small sample, already that methodology, that method that you have chosen has introduced a very serious limitation. If you're going to do a qualitative study and you're dealing with a large population, then you will not have rich informants, or you cannot go around all that big population to get what we call rich informants or thick data for interpretation, for theming, for categorizing. That then you have entered that space with a limitation. Another definition of a limitation is that it is a design flaw. Problem with the design. A limitation is a design flaw. So limitations identify potential weaknesses in the study's research design and methodology. I like that. So when you are writing for me in chapter 1, what are your limitations? I expect your limitations to identify potential weaknesses in your research design and methodology. So limitations tend to act as an anticipator of the study's flaws. Limitations are restrictions in the study over which you have no control. For example, your study may be limited to a narrow segment of the population. You want to study them, but may be limited in the research method you choose to use. Newton and Rastam 2007. Furthermore, limitations are constraints outside of the researcher's control and are inherent in the study, which could affect the generalizability of the results. I am repeating this over and over again, and I'm deliberate. I want you to know that when you are dealing with limitations, you are touching on flaws and you cannot do anything about it. A limitation is a factor that you may or will affect. Sorry, a limitation is a factor that may or will affect the study, but is not under the control of the researcher. I'm very deliberate about this thing. You have no control. So when you are writing for me a limitation in your chapter 1, I will see whether you understand what a limitation is. If it is something you can control, then it is not a limitation. Look, in such studies that use questionnaires, a common limitation is the willingness of the individuals to fashion and to respond accurately. Questionnaires. When you take out a questionnaire, a common limitation is that some of your respondents will not be willing to respond to the questionnaire, or respond on time, or respond accurately. You know, they can decide to tell you wrong things. That one you have no control because you're using a questionnaire. Your methodology is a questionnaire. And so you have this limitation of using a questionnaire, and hence your lack of control. Because once you use a questionnaire, some people will be willing to answer it or some will not. Some might bring it on time or not in time. And some might decide because you have come, they want to give you the answers you want to listen to. Now, I want to repeat this. In such studies that use questionnaires, a common limitation is the willingness of the individuals to respond at all. They can refuse, to respond in a timely fashion, and to respond accurately. That is an option that you have no control over. Why? Because you chose to use a questionnaire. Limitations are important for the possible effects they may have on the outcomes of the study, and they are not controlled by the researcher. Sasa kama mtu ataamini, kama mtu atataka kuambia uongo about their school, you sent a questionnaire. That is the information you will carry out. If you take 100 questionnaires to a school and the response rate is 25%, there's nothing you can do about it. But it has caused a limitation to your study. The validity, the reliability of your study will begin to come under question. So limitations typically surface as variables that cannot be controlled by the researcher, but may limit or affect the outcome of the study. Limitations can become a problem for students if they are not specified. I want to pause there. I can see Helen has her hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, Prof. Good evening. My question is based on the point that you have just mentioned about the willingness of the individuals to respond, but you find that you might get those who are willing to respond, but then they don't give you the information that you expected. Could that be like the wrong choice you made, or because you just gave them and it just happened? Is that a limitation? Because at the end of the day, the data that you will collect might not be valid, or it might not be reliable when you're doing the analysis.
Yeah, and do you have a control over that? That's the question. Do you have a control? Can you control that? No, you can't. And that's why when you are writing your limitation in chapter 1, you must tell me how you're going to overcome that limitation. Yes, you must tell me this limitation of not getting enough respondents, how are you going to overcome it so that it does not affect the reliability and the validity of your findings? Zipporah. Your hand is up, Jeff Kemboy.
Thank you so much, Prof. Mine is just a question. Can I say inadequate resources can be part of the limitations?
I wanted to ask yourself, did you all of a sudden realize that you did not have money? Are you able to control that? Yeah, that's a good question you have asked. But are you able to control that?
It's possible to control it.
Yeah, you can go and look for money.
Yeah, you can get sponsors. You can, yeah. But there are
Actually,
things.
before, sorry, Prof, before you begin the research, I want to assume that this is something that we are planning. Like right now, we all agree that we are ready to start the research whenever we are told. So you need to have something like, I remember Daktari saying that you need to invest in a laptop, get your tablets, get whatever you want, whatever it takes to do this master's. So get all the resources that are required for the research before you can start saying that I don't have this or I don't have that for my research. So it's something that we can control.
Yeah. Manyara, MC?
I'm looking at this limitation and I'm asking myself, from what you have said, for example, in a questionnaire, when you already know people might lie in the response, they might be delayed, and then why should somebody continue using the same tool, knowing that it has these limitations?
Good question. That's not the mind of a researcher. Do you have an alternative to gathering the data other than the questionnaire? Yeah, to overcome that limitation, do you have an alternative?
Prof, allow me answer him.
Yes.
Yeah, to avoid that, you can use various types of data collections. You cannot rely on one, because if you rely on one, you are likely to get what your research is likely not to be successful. Thank you.
Yeah. So I want us to be awake to this area, because this is an area that kills a lot of studies. And many of you are never able to tell me really what is a limitation. What is the limitation? And how are you going to overcome that limitation in your study? Taslin Otieno.
Thanks, Prof. I just wanted to ask on a question on what Cindy has just said. When you're looking for an alternative, is it looking for another way of getting the data from the respondents, or just looking for ways of making sure that the respondents can give you accurate information? Because I feel like if you're eyeing the same respondents and you want to use different alternatives on them, respondents have a very short, or most of them are usually impatient, and so if you use this on them and you feel like they are not giving you the correct information, going back to them to maybe inquire about the same thing might not be easy. So what exactly do you mean by getting an alternative? Thank you.
Okay. Good thinking, forward thinking. If I have given the questionnaire, I'll give the questionnaire and I'll look at the responses. How do I reduce the errors or the falseness that I'm receiving? So if this questionnaire was targeting teachers in the school, I might give parents of the school the same questionnaire on what they think the level of preparation for exams is in that school. So what am I trying to do? I'm trying to raise the veracity of the pronouncements of the teachers by getting it from the parents, getting it from the students, getting it from management, and therefore you minimize the falseness or the weaknesses of your results. In fact, I've mentioned here that when a researcher discusses limitations, they are discussing the possible and real weaknesses of their research design. Limitations described by the researcher are those that may or did affect the study's validity or findings. The limitations tend to address the researcher's awareness of the shortcomings in the research design and methodological approach to the study, thus adding to the researcher's credibility. Calabres 2009. I don't know how many are getting this meaning, because this is very rich. This is very rich. Here, this is very rich.
May I make an observation?
Please. Is that Boaz?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Go ahead, yeah.
Yes, as the discussion is going on, I think there's one point that you're emphasizing, that when it comes to the limitation, then the researcher has actually no control over this. And so then that actually then helps us to understand that where then we are talking of areas where there are possible control, then that is eliminated as a limitation. If I'm getting you correctly, I would pursue that line. The second thing is, I also wanted to look at these examples, cases where I think the Ministry of Education in Kenya, at a time when they were really struggling with this capitation grant, and they said, okay, here we are, we've not really concluded on the matter of this online the information system and all that. So what do we do? So using the officers at the county level, sub-county level, and then they say, now give us indication or just the actual numbers of the students that are enrolled in these particular schools. And they say that when they did that, they actually got them well signed. But now then when they said, okay, for these schools, we seem to be having some spaces. We need to actually give you additional numbers of students. When that happened, then we also realized that they were indicating that they got different numbers. Yes. So I think in the process, when they realized that, then we can use technology to actually do away with all these distortions. So in that case, then when there exists such very clear options or an approach beforehand, for you then to proceed and say it is a limitation when it has been straightened, would that be a limitation?
Yes, and a very thoughtful example there. And ladies and gentlemen, just to emphasize what Boaz is saying, what I'm trying to say here is this. Limitations tend to address the researcher's awareness of the shortcomings in their research design and methodological approach to the study, thus adding to the researcher's credibility. It is a very scaring thing when you are sitting in a PhD defense and somebody is being asked, what were the limitations of your study? And they're going round and round. In fact, you obviously can see that they don't understand that you have no control over that limitation, and therefore it is not an arrow being thrown at you. But you must be able to say, these arrows were going to be thrown at me because of flaws in the research design and methodological approach by nature. Then you become credible as a researcher. You are able to argue out. In fact, at Daystar now, I'm going to insist in chapter 5 that the candidates, both masters and PhD, tell us, how would you have anticipated the limitations at the start of the study? Yes. Would you change your assumptions after now that you have done this study and you've gotten these results? Would you change your assumptions as a researcher? Yeah. That's where the strength is coming in now. Othello.
Thank you, Prof. I was reading a book on research one time. One of the warnings, especially about limitation, was that the accessibility of the population that you are going to do research on should be key in your research proposal. And then the example that I was giving was that, for example, an African American cannot go to do research in the area of Ku Klux Klan, the white supremacist groups in the USA. How do you go there? How do you go to interview those people? Those people are already very hardcore people against black. So that you avoid this kind of thing of limitations, to minimize limitations.
Yes, and I am going to give you a template where you're going to look at the various types of limitations and where they're coming from. You know, just like you have said, there are many constraints. Let me show you these examples. Use of self-reported data in a survey is a source of a limitation to your study. Time constraints, time to collect data. So if you just are doing questionnaires and you are saying you're going to collect data now in October, November in Tana River, and you know that's the rainy season, you know that's the rainy season, you should have anticipated to collect this data at a different time. Yeah. If the length of the survey instrument can cause problems, so people get fatigued, you have created it yourself. You are reducing the validity and the reliability of the responses. The design of the survey instrument, the sampling design, we haven't done sampling yet. That's our chapter 3. How are you going to collect the data? You know, you are already introducing limitations. And that's why, as a bright researcher, you are aware of these things. The sampling bias, the target population constraints, the Ku Klux Klan. Yeah. The data collection modality type. What are you using? The survey questions, closed-ended. The survey bias. Those are limitations. The research and misinterpretation. Misinterpretation of participant data. So all these things will impinge on the validity and reliability of your findings. And I know I'm raising the bar here high for a master's class, but I'm futuristic in my thoughts that if we get it right now, we'll have no problem with our PhD program. Manyara, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Yesterday I was in a meeting, and in Nairobi we were trying to look at some of the issues that leads to examination cheating.
Yeah.
And then in our discussion, us as principals, we were trying to look at other things. We're not looking at ourselves as any role we have played. Looking at the issue of promotion by TSC, pegging it on results, the issue of capitation. But I was looking at it that we were running away from some of the actual causes. Perhaps our morals and ethos have gone down. So if it was a research I was doing on examination cheating, is the concept or the reasoning of principles can it be looked at as a limitation? Because we are trying as if to protect ourselves, even we don't want to do self-assessment. Is that a limitation, Professor?
Yeah, so the veracity of your responses is questionable because you're trying to protect your turf. So if I was a researcher, how do I overcome that? How do I triangulate to increase the validity of my findings? Yeah, that's a good thing. But let me just go through this. Okay, Madiang, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I wanted to add that probably for Manyara, the issue there would be conflict of interest because it's a kind of self-evaluation in this context. That's my feeling.
Yeah, good. So just look at this. I am being mean with the information because I'm going to give you some quiz around here. But look at this limitation. A key limitation was the use of self-reported data, what we are talking about. Data reflected the owner's perception of domestic violence, which may have been distorted or incomplete. Some of the participants may not have properly comprehended the subject matter. You know, this domestic violence, if it is self-reported data, the data will reflect a lot of our own perception of domestic violence, particularly if you've not read around the subject. And that becomes a major limitation to the findings of your study. Somebody mentioned time constraints, but I want to emphasize the window of opportunity to collect the data was very limited. For example, the rains are coming. It would have been more beneficial to take more time to collect additional surveys than squeezing yourself at that particular time when there are these other constrainous variables. Another key limitation was the length of the survey instrument. If it is too long, participants get tired or they just tick very quickly. So you end up getting incomplete surveys or surveys that are not deeply thought through. So I would like you to understand that limitations are potential weaknesses that are out of a researcher's control. And limitations are inherent limits in the research methodology and research design. And these areas make the study a scientifically rigorous investigation. So you must be able to overcome those design and methodology weaknesses in anticipation, as it were. but we'll get into the details of that a little later. Now, delimitations are constraints on your study based on population scope. Yeah. Delimitations are based on population scope. So I've had people saying, what is the difference between a delimitation and a scope? It's the same thing. Yeah, your scope is your delimitation. So think of delimitations as the boundaries of your study. And delimitations are defined as chiefly concerned with the scope of your study. So delimitations describe the scope of the study or establish parameters. And delimitations also prevent you from stating that your findings are generalizable to the whole population because you have done scoping. So this recurring problem among you students is the misunderstanding of the true meaning of delimitation. There is confusion to them because of the generic definition of a delimitation. The characteristics of a study in which the researcher can control constitute delimitations. So, okay, what is that? Now, the primary reason why there are problems writing delimitations is because that definition is only at surface level and does not give further rationale as to why it is. So there's no context behind the definition. So again, the students often do their delimitations wrong. The generic definition of a delimitation does not help students understand why they often write them wrong in a study. As mentioned earlier, they confuse delimitations and limitations as though they are interchangeable. This has been a recurring problem for doctoral and master students. One of the prevailing issues on delimitations is that there is no consensus on what they actually are. Many authors profess different definitions of delimitations. So we have a conflict in terms of what delimitations actually mean. Many authors state the conventional definition of delimitations, that they are within the control of the researcher, which is fine. You can choose to do your study in Vihiga County and not in North Rift. Again, the key meaning of delimitations is defined as factors that prevent you from claiming that your findings are true for all people in all times and places. So because you have done scoping, you have picked a boundary, you cannot claim generalizability of your findings. You can't. Another interesting aspect of delimitations is that they imply limitations on the populations to which the results of the study can be generalized. For example, you may decide to only study males, either because the theory on which your hypotheses are based has not been studied in females, or because you have a readily accessible population of males but not females. So think of delimitations as self-imposed boundaries that you use to delimit the scope of your study. The fact is that delimitations also act as denotations, meaning as a boundary of the study and ways in which the findings may lack generalizability. In considering this, you should examine such concerns as the nature and size of the sample, the uniqueness of the setting, the time period during which the study was conducted, and the limitation of the particular methods selected. And ladies and gentlemen, I always advise my students this, that the limitations, I always advise my students this, that the limitations are this. The limitations are the factors that prevent you from claiming that your your findings are true for all people in all times and places. Yeah, just learn that. So it delimits you from generalizability. So for a quantitative study, these are the factors that limit generalization. And for a qualitative study, these are the factors that limit the relevance of your study to other populations or individuals. So what are we saying here? What am I saying? If you are doing circumcision as a qualitative study, you cannot generalize circumcision practices among, for example, the Bukusus of Western and the Terek of Nandi. You can't. Yeah. So this is from Oregon. You know, Oregon is where our founder came from, Don Smith. For example, if you study nurses in Oregon, you'll not be able to extend your results to nurses in Arkansas. The point is that many quantitative studies gather data at a moment in time, cross-sectional studies. You walk in, you walk out. So, for example, if a researcher 30 years from now would seek to replicate your study, then they would have to decide what factors would get in the way. The limitations would be those factors. So when a researcher uses the term delimitation, it means they'll point to how he or she narrowed the study to focus on specific aspects. The researcher would indicate how they will narrow the specific focus of the study by identifying a precise type of research methodology, participant characteristic, context, or research site or phenomenon studied during the research. Furthermore, the limitations are further limitations actively put in place by a researcher in order to control the factors that might affect the results or focus more specifically on a problem. In brief, at this level, what am I saying? You have control over your delimitation. You are narrowing the geographical context. You are very specific about the population you want to study. That is a delimitation. A delimitation can also be the method you want to use. Remember the tobacco smoking problem. You can decide to use students and not parents. That is a delimitation. You have control over that. You can choose to have students as respondents and not parents. But a limitation, you have no control, and it is hidden in the design and methodology of your research process. Othello, I can see your hand is up.
Yes, Prof. Could the problem you're looking at here, is this what you have been repeating, that students have this problem, not understanding these terms that we're using? Could it be that students just consider these as terms to be in research methodology or in research a proposal that, oh, you have limitations and delimitations, but not actually realizing the consequences of these words and maybe the hindrance that they pose in research?
Yeah, and and I'll tell you for free, most of us instructors, lecturers, we talk about this in 1 minute and we are finished. Limitation. But have the students internalized what it is? Yeah. So I want to emphasize, you should use the limitations carefully and conservatively. So the following are good examples of the limitations. Exclusions related to gender differences. That is a delimitation. You're going to deal with females. Exclusions related to socio-economic backgrounds. So you're going to deal, this study will relate around the middle class and the success in education of their children. Your study will be absence of concern for the size of cities, organizations, utility districts, or school districts studied. So you have control on what you want to scope, and exclusions related to years of training or experience. So I'm going to study people who have bachelor's degrees or who don't have a university education. That is a delimitation. So can you be clear the difference between a limitation and a delimitation? And I'm going to send
Excuse me, Prof.
refined notes. Yes.
Oh, okay. If you're going to send the refined note, it's fine. I was requesting you go back a little, but it's fine.
Yeah. No, I'm going to send the refined notes for you to study and to put in your database so that you will walk through your defense when somebody asks you what's your limit, what are the limitations, what are the limitations of your study, and you're not doubting, you're not guessing. You know what it is all about. I then wanted to very quickly look at assumptions, understanding assumptions, and how to write them in a study. Assumptions of a study. It is very obvious that there's confusion around assumptions. Confusion, again, around assumptions. What are your assumptions? What are your assumptions? And this confusion is experienced with the researchers, doctoral mentors like me. And there is a paucity of research methods classes for doctoral students here. And I just thought that we need to be very careful about assumptions. And these assumptions become very murky because...
Excuse me, Prof, it has not yet been projected on your screen.
Yeah? Oh, we're not sharing.
Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Thank you. We're not sharing, sorry. Sorry, just a minute. Just give me a minute. Get it right.
Prof,
Yes.
perhaps as we wait for you to sort out the issue of the screen, a question I want to pose to all of us, maybe anyone can just chip in and answer. Why do we need assumptions in research?
Yes, class, there's a question. Why do we need assumptions? Are you able to see this screen, by the way?
It's not full.
Prof, it's
Are you able to see?
It's partially shown. It's partially shown. Yes, it's
okay.
clear. Yes, clear.
Yeah, I just want to. That's better.
That's okay.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's a difficult question you've asked the class. You see, there are philosophical. Why assumptions become very tricky? There are philosophical assumptions. Again, let me just stress this to all of you. A background in philosophical assumptions. If you remember the iceberg phenomenon.
Prof, this is your typical example.
The philosophical assumptions, yes, are beneath the belief systems of individuals, such as those related to epistemological assumptions, or what counts as knowledge and justified, or ontological assumptions, or questioning whether there are universal or multiple realities, and axiological assumptions, the extent to which the researcher's own values and biases are known and enter the study. You see, you will not be able to clearly articulate your assumptions if you don't understand the philosophical underpinnings of research. Because assumptions relate to the structuring of the knowledge, the reality, the existence, or the form of knowledge, ontological, or axiological assumptions. And this relates to your belief and value system, your biases. So we believe that having a more robust presentation of information on the topic of assumptions, as well as providing examples from journal articles and studies, will help you, both doctoral and master students, and even experienced researchers and mentors, to become more astute as they investigate, examine, or explore problems requiring research and comprehensive findings that improve decision-making among researchers and the stakeholders. And so, when we talk about assumptions, we have to understand what is meant by the term assumption when developing a research proposal. We must make and justify assumptions. And then we must distinguish between assumptions in qualitative research and the significance of your axiological standing, the participants' bias and assumption on assumptions. So, what are assumptions? What are assumptions? Assumptions can be defined as things that are somewhat out of your control, but if they disappeared, your study would become irrelevant. I don't know whether I'm talking to somebody. Assumptions can be defined as things that are somewhat out of your control, but if they disappeared, your study would become irrelevant. Hubbard, 1973, Simon, 2011, Simon and Ghost, 2013. So, for example, if you are doing a study on the middle school music curriculum, there is an underlying assumption that music will continue to be important in the middle school program. Now, if you are conducting a survey, you need to assume that people will answer truthfully. And if you are choosing a sample, you need to assume that this sample is representative of the population you wish to make inferences to. In other words, this is something that will stay, will hold. Another definition of an assumption is an unexamined belief that the researcher brings to the study and that is accepted as being valid. This is Bryant and Webster. So assumptions are statements that are taken for granted or considered true, even though they have not been scientifically tested. So think of assumptions such as principles that are accepted as being true based on logic or reasons, but without proof or verification. Assumptions provide a basis for the development and implementation of the research process. And also assumptions must clarify aspects of the study that are believed but cannot be proven to be true. Furthermore, only include assumptions critical to the meaningfulness of the study. And the researcher must describe the reasons why the assumptions were necessary in the context of the study. And I want us to understand what a basic assumption is. And some people say, why should I hold assumptions? So during the research synthesis process, Ulgmuth et al. 2017 argued that focused attention on the constructs of methodology and research design can be viewed with more objectivity when there is an examination of assumptions that could affect the decisions related to the research inquiry process. So when considering writing the assumptions, researchers need to give them some careful thought. So the basic assumption that drives design-based research should not be plucked out of the air. For example, iPods will make students more motivated. Nor should it only be derived from the literature. For example, learning communities enhance learning. That is Harrington et al. As an alternative, the assumptions that direct study are derived from the definition of the research problem in close collaboration with practitioners and fine-tuned, thorough literature that serves to, one, help flesh out what is already known about the problem, and B, guide the development of potential solutions. In such instances, the inquiry that forms the basis of the study helps the researcher to understand the underpinning processes and variables and how they impact the learning process. This sounds high level, but I'll give you examples that will make it very easy to comprehend what an assumption is. It is very important, for example, in order to generalize one's findings from a sample to a larger population, one must make assumptions about both the representativeness of the sample and the stability of finding gathered at one point in time. So you can't, when we say the results from the sample hold true for the population, then it means that the sample must be representative. That is the assumption. If the sample was not representative, you will not be able to make that generalizability to the larger population. And a lot of us fail to do that. So assumptions are very, very important in research. And I'll be asking you, what are the assumptions? For example, when you are sending out a questionnaire, one of your assumptions is that the respondents will tell you the truth. That's the assumption. If you don't have that assumption, then the whole process stops. It falls through. So you must be able to, after you are studying chapter 5, you'll be telling me whether those assumptions hold true or they don't. And for me, assumptions are the starting point of an investigation. And it is an act of faith, if you want to look at it that way. Without a basic assumption, each investigation would have to begin at the very earliest stage of knowledge, when knowledge began. There's also an assumption that anything that exists must exist in some measurable quantity. So these unstated and often unrecognized assumptions are very important for you to move forward, to do your study. And then you tell us whether those assumptions hold or not. An investigator studying the effects of an exercise routine on physical fitness must assume, for example, that physical fitness is a real, identifiable entity subject to definition and measurement. That's the assumption. When you say when you do exercises, you'll become healthier. That is an assumption that you can actually measure. After you exercise, we can measure and see how healthy you have become. So assumptions are statements. I'm seeing the hands up. I'm going to stop so that you can come in. Assumptions are statements taken to be true without the presentation of data to support them. And they must be consistent with present information and readily acceptable. So I'll be asking you many questions in your defense. What are your assumptions of your study? What are the assumptions of their study? And sometimes those assumptions after the study might not hold. Sometimes they may hold. Okay, let's go to the hands that have been raised. I've seen Zibora. I saw somebody else. Yes, Zibora and Cindy. Go ahead. Cindy, Emma?
Yes, Cindy here, Prof. One of us was asked a question about the importance of having assumptions. So my question is, based on what you're explaining, can we say one of the importance of having assumptions in your research, it's to give the researcher confidence to continue with the study?
Yeah.
Because if you don't have the assumptions, it will be very difficult for you to proceed with the study.
Yeah, because you see, let me be naughty. When you are going to do a study and your delimitation is gender, yeah, you're going to study females in Daystar University who are doing masters and PhD. The assumption is this, that during this study, the women participants will not change significantly. They will remain women. Yeah. It is also assumed that all respondents will answer all survey questions honestly and to the best of their abilities. Those are assumptions. Those are assumptions. And I hope you're now seeing, oh my God, these assumptions are actually the monsters that lead to limitations. Yeah, they're the ones that lead to limitations. So if I assume that all respondents will answer all survey questions honestly and to the best of their abilities, they are touching on the limitations of the study. And if they don't hold, then the validity and the reliability of my findings will come to question. Zipporah, go on.
Thank you so much, Prof. Can I say that assumptions can help a researcher identify the problem and also predict the possible outcome?
I would be reluctant to say that. I think I want you to say assumptions will help us not be intimidated by the limitations of our study. You know, assumptions give us confidence to go on in spite of the limitations in the research and methodology. Yes. Assumptions help us gallantly go on assuming that the delimitations will hold. Yes, the delimitations, if the delimitation surrounds a method, surrounds gender, surrounds a geographical location, that it will hold. Yeah. If I'm doing governance, and that is my delimitation, my delimitation is around governance, and I'm talking about democracy, my assumption is that Kenya will remain democratic and there will be no change in the governance of this country during my time of study. Yeah. So I wouldn't, Zipporah, I wouldn't stretch my mind to the problem and the findings. No. Can you walk around? Anytime you think about assumptions, think about them hovering around the limitations and limitations of your study.
Thank you, Prof.
Yeah, Naskia, the class is quiet, but you know, I didn't ask you to enroll for the master's class. Huh?
We are internalizing. We are internalizing.
Yes, I never told you to enroll.
Excuse me, Prof.
Yeah.
Can we say assumptions are actually what drive us to do research? Because we believe that something will happen if ABC don't happen. Can we say it's assumptions that drive us to do research?
I think assumptions are encouragers. Assumptions are things that give us impetus But let us remember, they don't go beyond the limitation and delimitation. I'm being very careful, because the main driver of the research is the research problem, which is another different area. Brenda Kinyi.
Can we say that assumptions guide our thinking and also it influences our behaviors?
In a way,
Yeah.
it keeps on telling you, hey, this may be true, this may not be true, or it gives you the courage to say things will remain the way I have assumed. Yeah. And, for me, I find assumptions in quantitative research very, very scary. Maybe one of these days I'll ask you why. Assumptions in quantitative studies will hold. But you know, in qual studies, in qual studies, it is observation. And there are many narratives. So you might begin to struggle with those assumptions. Taslin Otieno.
Thank you. So, 2 months ago, we were having this research in informal settlements, and the parents of the respondents thought that maybe through this, their children would get sponsorships. And so this was actually the end line. And they did not want us maybe to go to their homes and not find their children. So sometimes you'd find that a parent would even borrow a child from the neighbor's house. And so is an assumption, can I assume that, or can I list that as an assumption, that I assume that whoever I talk to is the right respondent? Because after maybe probing during the study, you talk to this girl, you realize that this girl does not even live in this house. So that was one of the maybe major errors that we would get. So can you assume that, can you list it as an assumption that whoever you talk to is the right respondent, or that is an error margin? Thank you.
Yeah. But and then Taslin, I hope you are seeing, where is that going? Where is that going? That is going to affect the limitation. Yes, the research method and design. And so it is going to hamper the validity and the reliability of your findings. That's why I've told you, talk about assumptions. Know that assumptions like clouding. That's why they like hovering around. Let me just finish by saying this. There are generally 13 types of assumptions that researchers can make about their study. The first one, participant behavior in terms of truthfulness and ethical behavior. And you know, if there is no truthfulness, what happens? It affects the limitation. Yes, if there is no truthfulness, if this assumption doesn't hold, then you have a problem with the validity and reliability of your findings. Participant qualifications for the study is another assumption. Their expertise. Participant cognitive abilities in terms of the understanding of the questions being asked. If you go and ask students at Alliance Girls and students at that other school, You know that other school in Nasirembe village about the value of technology as an enhancer of learning. Yeah. Cognitive abilities in terms of understanding. That is an assumption. The tools and instruments used to collect data is another assumption. That they have criterion validity. Will come to measure the validity and reliability of your instruments. That's why many of you don't masquerade to be researchers yet. So don't try and say, I'm going to develop my own instruments. You are too far away from there. You will use validated instruments if I'm your supervisor. We shall not trying to develop instruments whose validity and reliability, the instruments themselves, will be below level, so that even what we are collecting, we are not measuring what we are supposed to measure. The researchers believes they bring to the study is another assumption, particularly qualitative researchers, because you are the instrument. You are the instrument of data collection. So the assumption is that you will try as much as possible not to start telling people how primitive they are in your mind as you collect data. Then you will not understand the essence of circumcision, the essence of coito. You will not understand the essence of the twilight girls in Mombasa. You won't. If you are coming in with beliefs. Yeah. The assumption is that you just go there. Like I told you about this study of one of my classmates in KU. She embedded herself with the twilight girls in Mombasa. She didn't carry her beliefs. She tried to be objective. So that's an assumption. Selected statistical analysis for the study is another assumption. I'm hoping I can put a lot of courage in one or two of you to do a meta-analysis. My assumption is that you'll be prepared for the rigors of a meta-analysis. Instead of going out to collect data, we look at studies that have been done, thousands of studies that have been done. Then we'll pick out the variables and do statistical analysis against them. I'll be assuming that. So I'm hoping through my teaching and my other colleagues, we shall give you the courage, the way Khalware gives his bulls Brewery West, for them to be courageous. I hope I'll be able to make some of you daring, even when you know you're going to the slaughterhouse. The normal distribution of the data, again, you are assuming a normal distribution curve, or the data is skewed towards either end. That's an assumption. The chosen research methodology and design and the information we seek. Remember the tobacco smoking phenomenon? That researcher decided to go qualitative and decided to use students as respondents. That is an assumption. The chosen methodology and design. The validity and reliability of the survey questions. I've already said that. None of you, and I want to repeat, none of you at master's level should masquerade that you have the ability to design valid tools. Please, don't. That is blind aggressiveness. And I'm being polite with my word. I could have used more harsh words.
Prof, what are these tools?
So you'll have to use validated tools. Your supervisor should be able to help you SurveyMonkey has a lot of validated tools for any area you want to study, whose Cronbach alphas and what have been measured. So you are sure that they are measuring what they are supposed to measure. The representativeness of the study of the sample would be another assumption. And the stability of the finding gathered from the study, particularly if you're doing a cross-sectional design, not a longitudinal design. The sampling or the gathering data from the targeted population would be another assumption. Are we getting the right data? Are we cleaning it out? Are we able to use statistical packages to analyze both qualitative and quantitative? So those are assumptions. And those are the ones I want you to discuss. But you don't discuss the 13. At master's level, you just list 1 or 2 or 3 assumptions. Yeah. So also don't try to be too clever by listing so many assumptions, because all those assumptions, you'll have to tell me how you'll overcome the dangers they pose. And I'll be giving you a matrix again, which I'll want you to use to practice in understanding assumptions. I want to stop there. And I hope I've provoked you enough on limitations, delimitations. Boaz, are you there? And assumptions.
Yes, I'm there, Malam.
So I hope we have provoked you, but I'm also deliberately lifting you to another level. I don't want us to, when people talk about assumptions and limitations and delimitations, I want you to feel, but this we have learned, this I know, and I'll be giving you this material. I'll clean it out and condense it for you so that you make it as a point of reference. Very good. Any reaction? I don't want to say questions. Any reactions?
Well, let me just a point for you to clarify, because there's a time the first time I came across what is construed to be a killer assumption.
Yeah.
How true is it that an assumption can be a killer assumption?
Yeah, because it takes you to the grave of invalid findings. Killer assumptions, by the way, all these 13 could be killer assumptions if they don't hold. If they don't hold. So the struggle you'll be doing for us is telling us how you are overcoming the limitations and the limitations that will then give birth to this killer, that would then make your assumptions killer assumptions. In fact, the bigger thing we look for is, can you tell us how you overcome your limitations and limitations? And by extension, I'm saying, can you hold your assumptions true? Because assumptions are hovering around your delimitation and limitations. Yeah. All right. Any other comment? Regina, you're okay? You're still breathing? Regina,
yes, I'm okay, Prof. I'm okay.
You're breathing. Okay. Caroline Ndunge?
Yes, thanks, Prof. One time, one lecturer told us that you may use assumptions or research questions. In this case, you can use either or. Is that true?
Do you think it is true? that you can use assumptions or research questions? Do you, from what I've just, from what you have interacted with me the last 6-7 weeks, do you think that is true? Wow.
Prof, I can say for a fact that today's lesson is very loaded. Very loaded, and it has presented a new dimension to this class.
Yeah. And if I'll be teaching you, God willing, if I ever taught you in PhD, I'll use the same notes. The same. I'm just lifting you to another level. So you walk through your master's and you walk through your PhD. In fact, many of you will find research methods at PhD nothing. You'll be just writing your proposals as the lecturers are running through the research courses. Madiam?
Sante, I am breathing. Just to. So, there is something that I think we will meet under Nakosti coming forward, and it has to do with protecting the human subject. And this is also accompanied by what I would refer to as the ethics in research. So that when you are talking about limitations, one of which you said was that participants will answer all questions. For example, you remember that line that you said. But then when we are getting consent in an FGD, for example, or from a key informant or from any participant, we are also via ethics telling them you are free at any one time to stop answering any questions or walk away from this interview, you know. So as you are speaking, I'm seeing our adherence to the ethics and human subject research, protecting the human subject in research. Those may in fact be limitations in one's study. Would that be a valid conclusion?
Not really. I just want, look, and that's why I've told you, don't try to prepare instruments for now. Because when you have an extremely long questionnaire, you are just committeeizing your respondent. Is that an English word? Committeeize. Committee prison, committeeized. You are committeeizing. You are, this fellow is agonizing to finish that. That is very different from when you are asking them questions that they are uncomfortable about. You see the difference?
Yeah.
So of course ethics, yes, but this is now you are dealing with questions that people are definitely not being comfortable with, ethics. But when you have horribly long questionnaires, oh my, it's agony. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so allow me to summarize. I have 15 minutes. Allow me to summarize, to give you 5 minutes break. We come back at 1:15, and then I want to summarize literature review, and then I can safely now move to chapter 3. If there are a few things we haven't tied up, we tie them when we're doing disciplined inquiry, when we're writing our proposals next semester. Caro, I don't know whether you are online. Dr. Mwaka, are you still online? I don't think she's there. Have you people received your marks for your first assignment in policy and planning?
Not yet.
Okay, I'm surprised because I gave them the papers and I wanted them to scan the top page and upload so that you know where your mark. It's so important for us to give you feedback so that you are preparing together with what you did in multiple choice. So let's take 5 minutes break and then we come back.
Really curious to know what I got in the multiple choice.
The multiple choice results were out. The class had an average of 20.3. The top students had about 23 or 24 out of 30.
26.
I think he means ELP 623 on policy. That's where we've not received our results.
Oh, okay.
Which one?
Yes.
The multiple
Charo,
choice?
no. The
The
written.
other ones, Prof, sorry, I hadn't shared with them because I was just finishing scanning each page. My administrator was away, and so I was doing it myself. I'll share with them too.
Yeah, let them get their marks as fast as possible. It helps them to prepare. So let's take 5 minutes break, come back. I'll summarize research, literature review, and then we move on. Yeah.
Dr. Ayiro, what about the quiz we did last?
The quiz was instant. You didn't see your mark?
I didn't see my mark.
So didn't see my marks.
I also did not.
There were no marks.
For 623 or this one? This one is released.
What are you?
The quiz we did on Sunday.
623.
The one that we did last week.
On Sunday.
We didn't get the marks.
Didn't see the marks.
No.
None of us.
Let me check.
The review is not permitted.
What is not permitted?
The review to see the grade, the final
Let me
grade.
check. Let me check.
Yeah.
Unasoma? Simama umeweka pia. Mbona huyo ngoja amenema? Si ulikuwa umenifurusha sana.
Regina, mute please.
Sorry.
Are we still on?
Yes, we are, boss. We just have a break of about 5 minutes.
Yes, I heard about the break and I'll just come back with silence.
Yeah, the break is still there. Maybe some few more seconds.
Okay.
Start to the resumption.
We are still breathing.
We are still breathing. Delimitations have put people to bed.
Who told you to join a master's class?
Prof said, but who asked me
That was classic.
When Prof comes back, I want to find out that thing which is there on the screen. I can't save it. I tried to save it in my folder, but it can't save. So it's like Prof has locked that document, which is by Prof himself.
Which document?
That one is by Prof. There is a book which Prof uploaded for us, but I can't save it. I tried to
Has
save it.
anyone seen Prof's, should I call it devotion, around hitting, I think it was about hitting rock bottom. Has anybody seen it? Because I checked, I haven't seen it.
Lying in the low places.
Yes, that one.
That one, yes.
I thought I had posted it, but I think I'm going to go through all materials, particularly last week and this week, to make sure it's all on your portal. All right. I think we are back, and I want to do a summary, a very quick summary of the literature review. Somebody's over breathing.
I'm praying that we will cross this bridge.
All right. Literature review. This is just to make sure you have a summary of this. I know we gave you the PowerPoint presentation, I hope, of the literature review. I also gave you notes to look through, but I still feel I need to emphasize a few things because it's very, very important. This is really our chapter 2. Those of you who are following this closely, the literature review falls under chapter 2. And what I'm saying is that you should be able to define what a literature review is and why it is important, and then identify the 5 steps in conducting a literature review. What is a literature review? Is a written summary of the literature, describes past and current information and research. It is organized into topics. It reports the literature based on themes or individual studies, and documents a need for your proposed study. So you can see you can't start your research project before you delve into the literature. You must read around that subject. And that's the work of a supervisor to lead you into journal articles and other books for you to read. And the topic will just pop out. Now, literature review in a quantitative study, those of you who do quantitative study, documents the importance of the research problem at the beginning of the study, supports the theory or explanation used in the study, foreshadows the research questions, provides an explanation of the results in other studies, and in the theoretical prediction at the end of the study. So I'm hoping that in our minds at this level, we are simply saying that if you are doing a quantitative study, you are going to verify theories. And so you need to delve into other studies and look at the theoretical prediction, and that will help you foreshadow your research questions. In a qualitative study, again, just like in quantitative, documents the importance of research problem at the beginning of the study. So both are the same, quantitative and qualitative. You must bring out the problem of the study. Does not foreshadow the research questions. And here we are going to do observation, and we are going to generate change questions as we go along. And it is used to compare and contrast with other studies at the end of the study. The process of conducting a literature review, identify the key terms, identify the key terms, locate the literature, critically evaluate and select the literature. This is the work of you and your supervisor. So you're not meandering all over the place. Organize the literature, write a review. That's why the best way to supervise a student, we will find an area of concern, an area of constraint, an area of pain, an area that requires advocacy, an area that is longing for new knowledge. And then we shall locate the literature, sample maybe 5 articles. Normally I go up to 10, 5 articles. And then critically evaluate and select the literature. That means now you read, you highlight, you annotate. Then you organize the literature. You now see which are the most important articles that relate to where you want to study. And then you do a synopsis. You write a review of the works you'll have read. How do you identify the key terms? Write a preliminary working title for the project and select 2 or 3 keywords that capture the essence of the project. Pose a short general research question that you like to answer in the study. Look in catalogs of terms to find words that match your topic. In other words, just go to the databases and start entering those key terms, and the articles will just start coming out. Scan the contents in your library stacks and the table of contents of educational journals, health journals, security journals, wherever. Priority value of sources in the literature, summaries, journals, books, indices, databases, early stage literature. That means papers posted on websites, conference papers, and even Wikipedia. Yeah, there's no harm. You'll get very useful information there. So in other words, literature review, you become a scavenger. You become a scavenger. So you scavenge all over.
Positive scavenger.
Helen.
Yes, Prof. I just wanted to ask, in most cases, it said that the Wikipedias are not credible sources of information. So I don't know. You've said it is, you can get some information. Yes, we can. And we love actually Wikipedia so much. But
it is
I hear it is not credible.
The latest consensus, you can actually cite Wikipedia. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, if you found, I've written something in Wikipedia about emotional intelligence or leadership. See, you'll go and Google this author and look at his publications and credibility. Go and look at my H index, my I index in Google. Have I been cited extensively elsewhere? And you can quote. So don't hesitate, right?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prof, for giving us some confidence.
Databases used in educational research, and you can add other databases. Go to the library, look at those databases. They're all available in our library. You'll get all kinds of, in social sciences, EBSCO host, Eric, PsycInfo, social file, dissertation abstracts, all those, plus many others. So go to the databases And you know, you can access our library from anywhere in the world, from wherever you are. If you're not getting the articles, ask for them from the library sources that will be given. Madiang?
Professor,
Your hand is up, Madiang.
Yeah. Am I audible now on your end? I hope so. Yeah. Am I audible on your end?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I was saying,
Yes, you are.
Jinga, you've mentioned the your H index and I index. I don't know what that is. What do you mean? Over.
We'll be coming to that in a short while.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to be sure.
First of all, I have not, in next semester, when we are doing disciplined inquiry, I will teach you how to cite, how to reference, and we'll go into Google Scholar. You can, for now, you can just Google Ayiro Laban, Google Scholar, go see you'll see I index, H index, do some research, ask what is an I index, but it's the number of times you are cited, either one of your articles or how many of your articles have been cited. And that is a measure. So nowadays, we don't just say you have published. We ask, how extensively cited are you in this area? You get? Yeah.
I get it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So that's what it is. All right. Critically evaluate and select the literature. Is it a good, accurate source? I've added Wikipedia. Is it a national journal? Is it a reviewed source? Is it a research study? So you should be able to see. And if there's somebody who has written an article in leadership or in an aspect that you're dealing with, why don't you just Google the person and see how well cited they are? Then you know you are dealing with reputable or highly indexed journals for your study. That's you can do an evaluation. You can look at articles, you can evaluate them. You can also look where they are published. Are they published in index journals, or they are published in these journals that publish articles in 1 day or 2 days? Predatory journals. You must be very careful. By the way, we have been saying publish or perish, but nowadays people publish to perish. Yeah. So if you keep publishing in junk journals, you'll perish. Nobody will take you seriously. Critically evaluate and select the literature. Is the source worthy of inclusion? Topic relevance. Is the literature on the same topic as your proposed study? Individual and site relevance. Does the literature examine the same individuals and sites you want to study? Problem relevance. Does the literature examine the same research problem as you propose in your study? Accessibility relevance. Is the literature available in your library, or can it be downloaded from our website? So that's very important. Organize the literature. Organize the literature, abstracting studies. What do I mean? When you pick journals, colleagues, just pull out the abstracts. Don't try to read the journal first. The contents of abstracts vary for research studies and essays. Pull out the abstracts and see how close they are to the study that you want to study. The structure is essentially the same for quantitative and qualitative studies. You're looking for the research problem, research questions, or a hypothesis. And I hope you know that if we are quantitative, we shall be talking about research objective and a hypothesis. If we are qualitative, we shall be talking about research questions and the central phenomenon, data collection procedures, research and findings. So abstracting your studies is very important. Just looking at abstracts will help you narrow down to the appropriate studies. This is a hierarchy, a sample hierarchy of a literature map. I want you to look at this. This is borrowed from Creswell. So it's about the US, but you can domesticate this for an assignment, for practice. Domesticate this into your area of study. Try to create a sample hierarchy literature map. This is just an example. You look at it in your own time. Organize the literature, constructing a literature map, identify key terms of the topic and put them at the top of the map. Sort studies into topical areas or families of studies. So if you're doing leadership, is it institutional leadership we are talking about? Is it higher ed leadership? So you put them into families or categories and provide a label for each box, which will become a heading for your review. So please look through this. Like study abroad programs, the need for teaching programs to be culturally responsive, you look at the studies, and these are US programs. Then attitudes towards study programs, then personal insights of pre-service teachers, possible improvements, possible insights. You can actually create your own hierarchy map as shown. Organize the literature, constructing the literature map, develop the map on as many levels as possible, draw a box towards the bottom of the figure that says my proposed study, draw lines connecting the proposed study with other branches of the literature. So you are linking your study to the studies that you now want to go and search and bring out and review, do hypotheses, hand them over to your supervisor and say, now this is the area and this is my gap and this is my topic. And then circular literature map, need for further study, non-English speaking cultures. You can look at it and see how you can also create a circular literature map. The whole idea is mind mapping. I mentioned this one time. Mind mapping is a very powerful way of summarizing your ideas, and you can have all your studies in a circular literature map or in a map like this one, a hierarchical literature map. And then now you go in and bring out those studies and focus on your topic of study. Then writing a literature review, use a consistent style manual approach. Remember, for us, it is APA, style of formatting. I'll be covering that next semester when I'm telling you how to write using APA style and citing your studies and your references and so on. So there's end of text referencing, within text referencing, headings, tables, and figures. We shall do that based on the APA 7th edition format. Writing a literature types of reviews, there's a thematic review, literature documents, the theme identified by the researcher, no study is discussed in detail, study by study review, detailed review of each study, studies grouped by themes, summarized, linked by transitional sentences, and organized under subheadings. So it will depend whether you are being thematic or study by study as you do your review. Concluding statement in a literature review, summarize the major themes found in the literature review, end with a rationale for the need for your study based on this literature review. So I would like to stop there, and God willing, next semester when we start disciplined inquiry, in other words, writing our chapter 1, chapter 2, we shall spend more time again consolidating how the literature review is supposed to be. How do you package a literature review? Where is your conceptual framework? Where is your theoretical framework? But now I want a review. Yes. Yes?
Excuse me, Prof. Is it possible for us to get this summary? Is it possible for us to get this summary on a portal?
Yeah, all my notes and summaries will be uploaded.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll be uploaded. They'll all be posted. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. There being no other business, I have overshot your time by 14 minutes. I want to wish you good night and look forward to meeting you on Saturday evening for another delicious serving of policy and study. Thank you. And
Have
bye-bye.
a blessed